Natanz has two primary sites, a pilot fuel enrichment plant, which is above ground, and an underground hall that's designed to house at least 50,000 uranium-enriching centrifuges. In September 2007, President Ahmadinejad boasted that Natanz had 3,000 active centrifuges. Although experts believe the number may be lower, it was still a matter of concern.
Pakistan had installed fewer than 3,000 centrifuges when they made their nuclear weapons.
Some experts say an Israeli attack on Iran's nuclear sites, such as Natanz, might happen sooner rather than later.
If Israel were to start considering a strike on Iran's nuclear program, timing would probably be in the next 6 months to a year. Once they start filling the underground caverns with centrifuges, but prior to a point when they are in an industrial scale enrichment.
Another target could be Iraq.
Iraq would be a site where they would have reactors that are advantageous for the production of plutonium. The target at Iraq would be the heavy water plant, which is the primary place in Iran for producing cooling water for plutonium production reactors that are under construction at Iraq, which would be the second target.
The heavy water production facility are essentially these columns, and the columns themselves are above ground, and they look sort of like smokestacks.
Another nuclear site is also above ground, Isfahan.
The main target there is the uranium conversion facility. This is sort of the hardest target to figure out because it's one long, large building, but it's in amongst a bunch of other buildings.
Isfahan is the starting point for both Iraq and Natanz. So the destruction of Isfahan would deal a blow to both the plutonium production route and the uranium production route.
If Iran gets bombed, they're going to strike back at both America and Israel. And under those circumstances, it only makes sense to make sure that you do the best job possible. Obviously, the Americans have got a lot more bombers and bigger bombs, so the Americans would at least have the possibility of attacking many more targets than the Israelis would. But the Israelis will say to the Americans, we think that you can do a better job, we hope that you will do it, but rest assured, if you don't, we will.
In a war room deep inside the Pentagon, the U.S. military has been preparing highly sensitive top-secret plans for a possible bombing attack to take out Iran's nuclear weapons program. They have been working on this operation for over a year now and have designed it to be implemented on 24 hours' notice. All they are waiting for is the final order from their commander-in-chief, George W. Bush.
We'll try diplomacy. We'll work with the Europeans and the International Atomic Energy Agency. But if that fails, then at some point the administration will have to make a decision concerning whether it wants to use the military option or not.
If one looks at what the Bush administration said about Iran getting the bomb,
Iran with a nuclear weapon would be very dangerous for world peace.
I think that the Bush people have said frequently enough that atomic ayatollahs are unacceptable, that military action could come at any time.
The military calls its options contingency plans, and they are so classified that few people ever see them. But in 2006, these plans were leaked.
You have a group inside the government that is very concerned about possible use of those plans. And I think senior elements of the U.S. military are very leery about going after Iran.
It's basically just going to come down to a question of whether Iran can be encouraged to drop its nuclear ambitions. Hard to see how that's going to happen.
If it doesn't, there are several contingency plans. One calls for a limited bombing campaign similar to what Israel may be planning, an attack that targets Iran's nuclear weapons sites.
Initially, an American military strike against Iran's WMD facilities is going to consist of cruise missiles, stealth bombers to take down Iran's air defenses, and also to attack the primary WMD facilities, none of which are beyond the reach of America's conventional firepower.
That firepower could include the GBU-31, a 2,000-pound guided air-to-surface weapon that can use as its payload deep penetrating bombs called bunker busters.
When they impact the ground, they don't break apart, they start penetrating into the ground, and then there's a fuse in them that tells them when to detonate. The first bomb could impact, penetrate, explode, and then you could drop another bomb precisely on that spot that would then go down the hole and penetrate there. It's a very impressive technique.
Natanz is by far the most difficult, both in terms of its size and the fact that it's buried and surrounded by feet of concrete.
But it may not be able to withstand the latest U.S. weapon, the largest bunker buster yet, a 30,000-pound monster called the Massive Ordnance Penetrator. It would deliver 10 times the explosive power of its predecessor and would be carried by stealth bombers and B-52s.
Usually when you have contingency plans, you have multiple contingency plans. The danger in going with the attack Iran light plan is that you have to assume that they're not going to strike back. That's a huge assumption. I don't think the U.S. military planners would want to leave that question unanswered. I think the most credible contingency plan is the more robust one. Huge numbers of air and cruise missile strikes.
This contingency plan includes taking out Iran's retaliatory capabilities.
Sea skimming missiles, other anti-ship missiles all around the Strait of Hormuz and islands in the Persian Gulf. Hundreds of Scud-C missiles with range at the other side of the Gulf. The speedboat fleet trained in swarming tactics against commercial and military shipping.
If the plan is executed, the U.S. could attack Iran from 5 different directions.
We're talking about strikes launched directly from air bases in Iraq, strikes launched by aircraft carriers in the Gulf, heavy bombers operating out of Diego Garcia way down in the Indian Ocean, and then finally ballistic missile launches from submarines parked as far away as the Red Sea. It would be an extremely complex operation. An operation, as these late contingency plans seem to indicate, of well over 1,000 combined combat, air, and cruise missile strikes.
To counter this attack, Iran would be using some air defense systems that are over 30 years old.
The centerpiece of their air defense is what the United States sold to the Shah of Iran in the late 1960s and early 1970s. It's the improved Hawk surface-to-air missile. The system that's causing a lot of concern to people now is a newer system, what's known as the SA-15 or the Tor M1. It's a sort of shorter range system that the Russians have recently sold to Iran. And this has caused a lot of consternation.
I've heard conflicting reports about the reaction of the Arab Gulf states to possible military action against Iran.
In November of 2006, Vice President Cheney flew to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, to meet with King Abdullah.
There were many rumors about what this discussion was. The dilemma with the Arab government's position on Iran is that they want the United States to contain Iran, to do something about Iran. But they are also very worried about what a war with Iran would mean.
Especially